This short lecture is on the structure of the American bureaucracy. Now, this includes a look at the uh, agencies, the department, the commissions, etc., that exist within the executive branch that we haven't yet looked at, because we have looked at the executive office of the president. So we saw or studied the White House office, the OMB, the CEA, and the NSC. And we've also covered the cabinet. Anybody and everybody from the Secretary of State and Defense down to the last one that was added, Homeland Security. So the first thing that we'll look at is or are the independent agencies. Now, these are organized like cabinet departments, but what they do lack is cabinet status. So anybody who is here is not included in the lineup for to be president in a worst case scenario. Now, there are a number of examples of independent agencies. We'll look at 3 of them. NASA is one. NASA is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The SBA is the Small Business Administration, and FEMA is sometimes suffers from a notorious reputation for not doing its job in a disaster. FEMA stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency. It does a great job sometimes. For instance, the floods along the Mississippi and other rivers in the 90s and since then, but less so in events like Hurricane Andrew in 1991 and, of course, Hurricane Katrina in 2006. Now, independent regulatory commissions are another type of agency that works within the executive branch. Now, these were created by Congress to regulate important aspects of the nation's economy. And so when we look at independent regulatory commissions, the big one that we do look at is the Federal Reserve, or the Federal Reserve Bank System, or what sometimes is known as the Fed. Now, these are created by Congress. They are generally operate in an atmosphere that is beyond presidential control. Now, the president nominates the commissioners. The Senate gives their consent to the commissioners. But once they have been put on whatever commission they've been nominated for, they pretty much serve independently of the executive branch. And I think that's generally a good thing. Now, commissioners, based on which commission they've been nominated to, will serve anywhere from 5 to 14 years. On the Federal Reserve, it's a little bit longer. On commissions like the FCC, it's a little bit shorter. Now, one of the other interesting aspects of this is that neither party can influence, let's say, the long-term operations of the independent regulatory agency, because neither party can have more than the one. Now, most of these are 5, 7, 9 member commissions. So at any one time, the majority party can only have a 1-seat advantage. And so sometimes presidents are forced to nominate someone from another party in order to maintain the parity of that of that commission. Now, just like in the Senate, the terms are staggered, so that not at any one time the commission isn't dismissed entirely. You always have people with expertise on the commission, because people are named or have their terms end at different times. And they can be fired by the president, but only if Congress defines the causes that would require them to be fired, and that just doesn't happen. Now, as we begin to wrap this up, told you it was short. I never lie to you. You know I never lie to you. There are the independent regulatory agencies. As we look at these, what they do and how they operate, what's very interesting and what can be kind of disturbing is the fact that they have quasi-legislative power, which means that they have the authority to make rules and regulations. that are then published in the Federal Register, which have the force of law. Some people might say, well, isn't that the job of Congress? But as we've learned, remember, Congress writes really bad laws. We are in an age of gridlock, and so things are being poorly written just to get them passed, and we rely on the bureaucracy to fill in the holes. Well, that's that quasi-legislative power that Congress has given the agencies in order to operate. And then, even sometimes more disturbingly, independent regulatory agencies like the IRS have quasi-judicial powers. So they are judge, jury, and executioner. These quasi-judicial powers give them the ability to settle disputes. Now, there are a number of other important regulatory commissions, and we'll go over 6 of them. The biggest one, of course, is the Federal Reserve Board, or the FRB, or what is commonly known for short, or in short, is the Fed. There's the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Now, this was the one that fined CBS $1 million for the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, which was just ridiculous. But they are the commission that looks or regulates the airwaves. The FEC is the Federal Election Commission. We got introduced to that when we were looking at federal election campaign law, campaign finance, interest groups, PACs. The NLRB is the National Labor Relations Board, which has gotten a kind of a bad rap, and deservedly so, in the last couple of years with the moves against Boeing. The SEC was big news in 2009-2010. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission. They have overview or oversight of the stock market in the financial community. And then the FTC is the Federal Trade Commission, which tries to resolve trade issues internally and externally. Now, we're almost done, but we have a couple more things to look at. One of these, or the last thing we're look at, is what we call government corporations. You are very, very familiar with these government corporations. They're created by Congress in order to serve a purpose. An example would be the Postal Service, which, as you know, is trying to get rid of Saturday service. They have been hit hard by technological advances, and so consequently they're a money-losing operation. But we probably have the best postal service in the world. Then there's the FDIC. When you walk into a bank, you'll see an FDI sticker on the door or on the window next to the door. And FDIC stands for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. They're the ones that insure your money in the bank up to $100,000. Its sibling is the FSLIC, the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation, which again does the same thing. And then an example of a different type of ownership is something that you know from your U.S. history, and that's the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is still run by the government. It's a series of dams and lakes and things in the watershed of the Tennessee River, and it was formed in the 1930s. Number one, it did tame the Tennessee River, which tended to flood quite often, and at the same time, it also gave us, I think, our first nuclear power plant way up in eastern Tennessee. So, this concludes our look at the structure of American bureaucracy. Coming up is the growth of American bureaucracy.